Ladies and gentlemen, when life doesn't unfold the way we expect it to, we often find ourselves asking, why me? Or where is God in all of this? But let me remind you today, God is working for your good. The truth is, His purpose for your life is always greater than our understanding. He sees the bigger picture. He sees the journey that you are on, even when the path seems unclear. When we're faced with obstacles, it's easy to get frustrated or discouraged, but we must remind ourselves that God is working behind the scenes, shaping our lives in ways we might not immediately comprehend. The process of transformation is often uncomfortable, but it's necessary. You see, growth doesn't happen without change, and change doesn't happen without challenges. We've all faced difficult moments that have pushed us to the limit, but in those moments, God is refining us. He is strengthening our faith, fortifying our character, and preparing us for the greatness He has destined for us. God doesn't waste anything. Every challenge you face, every trial you encounter is part of His divine plan to transform you into the person you were meant to be. You may not understand the process now, but trust that it is shaping you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. And let's be clear, God uses all things for your good. He doesn't just use the good things in your life, He also uses the struggles, the disappointments, and the hard patches. What you might see as setbacks are often divine setups for something greater. Romans 8:28 tells us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. So when life knocks you down, remember, God is at work in ways you can't always see. He is working through every situation to bring about His purpose for you, even when it feels like the world is against you. Part of trusting that God is working for your good is learning to trust His timing. We live in a world that demands instant results. We want what we want, and we want it now. But God's timing is perfect. It's not on our clock, and it doesn't operate by our schedule. Sometimes we don't get what we want when we want it because God knows that what He has for us is so much better than what we could rush into. There are seasons in life when we need to wait to grow and to prepare for what God has in store. Trust the timing even when it doesn't make sense, because God's timing is always right. Finally, we must live with confidence in God's faithfulness. When you're walking through the storm, it's easy to forget that God is still in control. But He is. You may not see it, but He's moving in ways you can't comprehend. Stand firm in the knowledge that God is for you, that He is fighting on your behalf, and that He will never leave you or forsake you. His promises are true, and He will fulfill every one of them in your life. You don't have to fear the future because God is already working for your good, and He will see you through to victory. So my friends, let's remember that God is working on our behalf even when we can't see it. Trust the process, embrace the transformation, hold firm to your faith, and never doubt that He is working all things together for your good. Your best days are ahead of you because God is working for your good, and His plans for you are greater than anything you could ever imagine. Keep your head up, stay faithful, and watch as God unfolds His magnificent plan for your life. There are times in our lives when we face situations that seem overwhelming, moments when we can't quite understand why things are happening the way they are. In those moments of confusion and uncertainty, we may find ourselves questioning God, why me? Why now? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that our understanding of the world, our lives, and even our struggles is all there is. But let me tell you today, God's purpose for your life is always greater than our understanding. We live in a world that is constantly telling us to seek immediate answers, to control our own destinies, and to have it all figured out. But life doesn't always work that way. God's plan for you is beyond your comprehension. His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. You might think you know what's best for you, but the truth is, God has already seen the end from the beginning. What might seem like a setback, a detour, or even a failure could very well be part of a much bigger plan that you can't see yet. When we look at the lives of people in the Bible, we see countless examples of this truth. Joseph, for instance, was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery. It didn't make sense at the time. But little did he know God was using his pain, his imprisonment, and his suffering to position him in the right place at the right time. Had he not gone through those challenges, he would never have been in a position to save his family during a time of famine. Joseph couldn't see the purpose behind his struggles at the time, but looking back, he realized that everything he went through was part of God's greater plan for his life. It's the same for us. We might not always understand why certain things happen, why some prayers go unanswered, or why life seems to be full of challenges. But in those moments, we must trust that God sees the bigger picture. When you're in the middle of a storm, it can be hard to understand why you're being asked to endure such difficulty. But the storm is often what strengthens you, prepares you, and positions you to be a blessing to others in ways you may never have imagined. You might not be able to understand it now, but trust that God is working all things together for your good. God's purpose for you goes beyond your current circumstances. It goes beyond the job you have, the relationships you're in, or the plans you think you're supposed to follow. He is aligning you with something far greater, something that may not make sense in the moment, but will become clear in time. Think about the times in your life when you couldn't see how something would work out, only for it to fall into place in a way that was better than you could have planned. That's God's purpose at work. It's not always immediate or obvious, but it's always intentional. This doesn't mean that the journey will always be easy, far from it, but it does mean that no matter what happens, we can trust that we are being guided by a force far greater than ourselves. Even in the moments of doubt, in the midst of the storms, God's plan is unfolding perfectly. He is shaping you, molding you, and preparing you for what's next. You might not understand it all, but that's okay. You don't need to understand it all. All you need to do is trust in His wisdom, His timing, and His love for you. So when life doesn't make sense, when things seem confusing, and when you're struggling to see the purpose behind your pain, remember this: God's purpose is always greater than our understanding. Your story is being written by a divine author who knows what he is doing. Trust in the process, even when you can't see the outcome. He's got you, and He's working all things together for your good. Transformation is not always a comfortable process. In fact, it is often the very things that challenge us, push us to our limits, and make us uncomfortable that bring about the most powerful changes in our lives. So, you see, transformation doesn't happen when things are easy. It happens when we are tested, when we are stretched, when we feel the weight of the journey. Yet in the middle of all the discomfort lies the opportunity for something greater. Many of us shy away from the idea of transformation because we associate it with struggle. We don't want to face the challenges, the pain, or the growth that comes with change. We want the reward without the work, the success without the sacrifice. But the truth is, you cannot become who you are meant to be without embracing the process of transformation. You cannot become the best version of yourself without allowing yourself to be molded, reshaped, and refined. Transformation requires us to look at the areas of our lives that need change. It calls us to examine our thoughts, our habits, our beliefs, and our actions, and to make adjustments where needed. It's easy to get stuck in old patterns and routines, to stay in the comfort zone where nothing changes and everything stays the same. But when you stay in the same place, you are not growing. You are not becoming the person you were created to be. You were made for more. You were made to evolve, to grow, to reach new heights, and to become everything you are meant to be. The key to embracing the process of transformation is understanding that it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about the lessons you learn along the way, the wisdom you gain from facing your fears, and the strength you build from overcoming adversity. But it's about becoming a person who is capable of handling the success, the blessings, and the responsibilities that come with growth. Without transformation, you would not have the capacity to sustain the life that God is preparing for you. You may be going through a period of struggle right now. Perhaps you're facing a setback, a disappointment, or a challenge that feels overwhelming. It's in these moments of hardship that you must remember that the process of transformation is at work. The pressure you feel, the discomfort you experience is not the end. It is the beginning of something new. It's the beginning of your breakthrough. So instead of resisting, instead of complaining, instead of running away, lean into the process. Trust that God is working in you, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Growth doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey and it takes time. But every step forward, no matter how small, is a step closer to the person you are meant to be. Every setback, every challenge, every obstacle is an opportunity for growth. The difficulties you face today are the building blocks for the future you desire. They are shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for what's ahead. When you embrace the process, you begin to see that each moment, each experience is an essential part of your story. So if you are in the midst of a transformation, don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Don't stop believing that something greater is on the horizon. The process may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. Your dreams, your goals, and your purpose are waiting for you on the other side of this transformation. Embrace it, trust it, and know that the best version of yourself is being created through every step of the journey. Keep moving forward, keep growing, and keep believing that the process is preparing you for something greater than you could ever imagine. There are moments in life when everything seems to fall apart. You feel as if the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and you wonder if anything good can come out of the struggles you're facing. But I want to remind you today, no matter where you are or what you're going through, that God uses all things for your good. This is not just a nice sentiment, it's a truth that we can hold on to in the midst of our trials. You see, it's easy to give thanks when life is going smoothly. When everything is going according to plan, we can acknowledge the blessings and praise God for what we have. But it's in those difficult moments when the storms of life hit that our faith is truly tested. We might not understand why things happen the way they do, but God in His infinite wisdom is working behind the scenes, using every moment, every experience to bring you closer to His purpose for your life. He is not just sitting back, watching and waiting for things to unfold. He is actively involved in every step of your journey, even in the moments that don't make sense. We tend to look at our circumstances and think they define us. We let the pain of the present overshadow the promises of the future. But God sees beyond the immediate. He sees what's coming and knows what's needed to get you there. He doesn't waste anything. Your struggles, your pain, your losses, God will use them to refine you, to teach you, to grow you into the person He has destined you to be. What may feel like a setback is often a divine setup for something greater. Your disappointments aren't the end of your story. They are part of the greater plan that God is unfolding in your life. Think about the people in the Bible who endured trials, people like Joseph, who was betrayed by his own brothers and sold into slavery. He was thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit, and yet through it all, God was working behind the scenes. Joseph could have given up. He could have let bitterness take over, but he chose to trust that God was in control. And in the end, all the suffering he endured was used for good. It positioned him to help save his family, to be a leader in Egypt, and to fulfill the plan God had for his life. Joseph's story is a testament that God will take every painful, confusing moment and turn it around for His glory and for your benefit. We often think we need to know every detail to have the whole picture before we can move forward, but faith doesn't work like that. Faith is trusting in what you can't see, believing that God is working even when you don't have the answers. It's in those uncertain moments that God does some of His best work. When everything seems to be going wrong, He is aligning things behind the scenes, orchestrating events that we may never even fully understand. But we can be confident that He is always working for our good. His plans for us are always bigger than we can imagine. And here's the powerful thing about God. He doesn't just use the good things for your good. He uses everything. He takes your failures, your mistakes, and your disappointments and uses them to build something stronger in you. He uses your pain to teach you compassion. He uses your struggles to teach you patience and resilience. God is never wasteful. Everything, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, has a purpose in His grand plan. Nothing you go through is in vain. It all serves a purpose. So when you feel like you're walking through the fire, when you don't see how things could ever work out, remember that God is using this moment. He's using your challenges, your heartache, your confusion, and your doubts to bring about something greater. The storm may feel overwhelming, but remember that it's temporary. The sun will shine again, and when it does, you'll see that all of the pieces, each struggle, each trial, each tear were part of God's divine purpose for your life. He is working all things together for your good. Keep trusting, keep believing, keep moving forward because God has not forgotten you. He is using everything in your life to prepare you for the future He has planned for you, and it's a future filled with hope, with purpose, and with His incredible goodness. Trusting God's timing is one of the most challenging yet powerful lessons we can learn in our lives. It requires faith, patience, and a deep understanding that God is working on our behalf in ways we might not always see. We live in a world where instant gratification is the norm. We are used to getting things quickly, whether it's the food we order, the answers we seek, or the results we desire. But when it comes to God's plan for our lives, His timing doesn't operate on our schedule. And that's where the challenge lies, learning to surrender to His perfect timing, even when we feel like we need answers now. You see, trusting God's timing requires us to let go of our need for control. We all want to know the how and the when, but God's way is different. His timing is not bound by the clock or the calendar. It's not about immediate results, but about preparing us for what He has planned for us. Just because we can't see the next step doesn't mean God isn't already working. There's a divine purpose unfolding behind the scenes, shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for the moment when the doors will open. But it's hard, isn't it? When things don't happen as quickly as we want, or when we're faced with delays that make no sense, it's tempting to doubt, to question, or to grow discouraged. We ask ourselves, why isn't it happening? Why am I still waiting? Yet in those moments of waiting, God is often doing some of His most important work in us. He's refining our hearts, strengthening our patience, and building our trust in His plan. His timing isn't about our convenience, it's about molding us into the people He created us to be. And sometimes that takes time. Think about the great heroes of the Bible. Many of them faced long seasons of waiting before they saw God's promises come to fruition. Abraham waited for years before he saw the fulfillment of the promise that he would become the father of many nations. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he was called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Even Jesus, who was God's son, waited for the right time to begin His ministry. If they had acted prematurely before the right time, they wouldn't have been prepared for what God was about to do through them. Their waiting was part of the process, part of their preparation for the incredible purpose that was ahead. In our own lives, we can sometimes feel like we're stuck, like we're spinning our wheels, not getting anywhere. But what if the waiting is actually a preparation? What if it's God's way of working in us, shaping us, and getting us ready for what's to come? We might not understand it, but that doesn't mean it isn't part of His plan. Trusting God's timing means trusting that He knows what is best for us and that His plan is always better than anything we could create on our own. And then there's the issue of comparison. It's easy to look at others and think, why are they moving ahead while I'm still waiting? But God's plan for each of us is unique. Just because someone else seems to be ahead of us doesn't mean we're behind. God's timing for you is custom designed, tailor-made for your life. It's not about following someone else's timeline, but about embracing your own. We need to learn to trust that where we are right now is exactly where we need to be for God to do His work in us. Trusting God's timing also requires a shift in perspective. It's not just about waiting for something to happen, but learning to trust that everything in our lives is leading to a greater purpose. Every moment, every experience, every challenge, and every delay is part of His divine plan. When we trust God's timing, we begin to see that there are no wasted moments. Even the struggles, the setbacks, and the obstacles are all part of the preparation. It's all working together for our good, even when we can't see how. And so we wait, not in frustration or anxiety, but in anticipation. We wait with a heart full of trust, knowing that God is at work. His timing is never early, and it's never late, it's always perfect. And while we may not always understand the process, we can take comfort in knowing that God's timing is always worth the wait. Every step, every season, every delay is leading us to a place of purpose, fulfillment, and divine destiny. When we trust God's timing, we allow ourselves to be led by His wisdom, His love, and His perfect plan for our lives. In closing, trusting God's timing isn't about passively waiting for something to happen. It's about actively surrendering our timelines to Him and allowing His perfect plan to unfold in its own time. It's about understanding that every delay, every detour, and every season of waiting is part of the process of preparing us for something greater. Even when we can't see the bigger picture, we can rest in the assurance that God is always at work behind the scenes, shaping us, refining us, and guiding us toward our purpose. So my friends, when you feel impatient, when you wonder why things aren't happening as fast as you want, remember this: God's timing is not our timing, but it is always, always perfect. Trust that He knows what's best for you, that He has you exactly where you need to be right now, and that the best is yet to come. Embrace His timing with confidence, knowing that He is faithful and that He is working for your good in ways you may not yet understand. Keep trusting, keep believing, and keep walking in faith, because God is always on time and He's always working in your favor.